the lost Rephaim kingdom that ruled Earth in secret. Step 1. Cinematic hook. Picture a world before empires had names, before Rome carved laws into stone, before Egypt crowned its first pharaoh. A world of towering shadows cast against firelit cave walls. A time when humanity whispered of beings who were not merely kings, but giants. Across the ancient Near East, long before modern borders divided the land, there were stories. Stories etched into memory, passed down through generations, preserved in sacred texts and fractured myths. They spoke of the Rephaim, an ancient race described not as ordinary men, but as colossal rulers whose presence inspired both awe and terror. The desert winds of Bashan still move across black volcanic stone. Their ruins are massive, their doors towering, their blocks impossibly heavy. Who were they built for? Why are their foundations so oversized, so disproportionate to the average human frame of antiquity? And why do so many ancient cultures, from Mesopotamia to Canaan, echo the same warning? They were here before us. They ruled in secret. And then they vanished. But what if they did not disappear at all? What if the story of the Rephaim is not merely legend, but the fragmented memory of a lost kingdom that once controlled the earth from behind the veil of recorded history? Tonight, we follow the trail of giants. Step 2. Mainstream history. In conventional biblical scholarship, the Rephaim are mentioned primarily in the Hebrew Bible. The Book of Deuteronomy speaks of them as a people great and many, and tall as the Anakim. The territory of Bashan, east of the Jordan River, is described as their stronghold. One figure stands out: Og, king of Bashan. His bed, according to the text, measured 9 cubits in length, over 13 feet long by modern measurement. Mainstream historians interpret these references cautiously. Many argue that the term Rephaim may have been used metaphorically to describe powerful warrior clans rather than literal giants. Others suggest that ancient writers exaggerated physical size as a literary device to emphasize strength or divine lineage. Archaeology does confirm that the region historically associated with Bashan, modern-day Golan Heights and southern Syria, contains megalithic structures. Dolmens, stone circles, and massive basalt ruins dot the landscape. Some date back to the Bronze Age, around 3000 to 1200 BCE. These constructions demonstrate that advanced societies lived in the area, capable of moving and stacking multi-ton stones. Yet nothing in conventional archaeology confirms the existence of a race of giants. Human skeletal remains from the period align with typical ancient Near Eastern statures, averaging between 5 and 6 feet tall. In Mesopotamian mythology, however, there are parallels. The Sumerians recorded tales of semi-divine rulers who reigned for tens of thousands of years before a great flood. These were not ordinary kings. They were described as beings of extraordinary stature and longevity. The Sumerian king list speaks of reigns stretching back 241,200 years before the deluge. To historians, these numbers represent mythological symbolism. To alternative researchers, they hint at something far older and far stranger. Step 3. The hidden theory. The alternative narrative begins long before the biblical age of Bashan. It begins in ancient Mesopotamia, nearly 450,000 years ago, according to some interpretations of Sumerian tablets. These tablets describe the arrival of the Anunnaki, sky beings who descended to Earth, allegedly from a planet called Nibiru, with a 3,600-year orbit. They came, according to Zecharia Sitchin's controversial translations, seeking gold and resources.
When their labor became too burdensome, they genetically engineered humanity as a worker species. Critics dismiss Sitchin's work as flawed, but his theories sparked a movement that re-examined ancient texts with a new lens. What if the Nephilim mentioned in Genesis, the mighty men of old, the men of renown, were the interbreeds of these celestial visitors and early humans? And what if the Rephaim were their descendants? In the biblical timeline, the flood of Noah occurs around 11,000 BCE, marking a catastrophic reset of civilization. Yet after the flood, the giants reappear: the Anakim in Canaan, the Emim in Moab, the Zamzummim in Ammon, all described as part of the broader Rephaim lineage. Alternative historians propose that these were not isolated tribes, but remnants of a pre-flood ruling class, a secret kingdom that survived the cataclysm by retreating underground or to remote regions, a bloodline determined to reclaim its dominance. They point to ancient architectural anomalies. The megalithic platforms of Baalbek in Lebanon contain stones weighing over 800 tons. The trilithon blocks defy easy explanation. In the Golan Heights, the Rouge El Hiri stone circle, sometimes called the Stonehenge of the Levant, predates much of recorded history. Were these structures built by ordinary Bronze Age tribes, or by a civilization with knowledge inherited from a forgotten age? The hidden theory suggests the Rephaim were not primitive giants, but technologically advanced rulers, keepers of astronomical knowledge, builders of cyclopean monuments, and architects of early kingdoms that history later fragmented into myth. Step 4. Evidence and artifacts. The evidence is controversial, scattered, and often dismissed. Clay tablets from ancient Mesopotamia describe the Igigi rebellion, lesser gods who revolted against forced labor. Afterward, humans were created as replacements. In some interpretations, the Nephilim appear as intermediaries between divine beings and humanity. Their presence on Earth is described as both powerful and destructive. Stone carvings from ancient Canaan depict towering figures beside smaller humans. Some scholars interpret this as symbolic hierarchy. Others argue the scale difference is too deliberate to ignore. Lost cities across the Levant contain oversized doorways and massive fortifications. Tel Es-Safi, believed by some to be biblical Gath, the city of Goliath, has yielded unusually large fortification walls for its time. Goliath himself, described as 6 cubits and a span tall, would have stood nearly 10 feet high. Then there are the suppressed discoveries. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, newspapers across the United States reported the discovery of giant skeletons, some allegedly measuring between 8 and 12 feet tall. The Smithsonian Institution has been repeatedly accused in alternative circles of confiscating and concealing such remains. Officially, the Smithsonian denies these claims, labeling them hoaxes or exaggerations typical of sensationalist journalism. Yet the persistence of the reports raises questions. Why do so many cultures, from Native American tribes to ancient Hebrews, preserve stories of red-haired cannibalistic giants? Why does the Book of Enoch, excluded from the canonical Bible, describe fallen angels teaching forbidden knowledge to their offspring? Massive stone sarcophagi found in the Middle East are often larger than necessary for average human burials. Could these have been designed for individuals of unusual size? Or were they symbolic, representing power and status rather than physical dimensions? Archaeologists working in Bashan have uncovered basalt houses with thick stone roofs and reinforced doorframes. Some structures appear almost fortress-like. While mainstream explanations attribute this to local material abundance, alternative theorists see something else: architecture built for beings of immense strength. And then there are the oral traditions. Ancient Ugaritic texts refer to the Rephaim not only as giants, but as shades, spirits of the dead dwelling in the underworld. This dual identity is striking. Were they merely large humans, or were they remembered as something more, part divine, part mortal, straddling realms? Step 5. Controversy. The academic community overwhelmingly rejects the literal existence of giants as described in ancient texts. Skeletal evidence does not support a separate race exceeding known human biological limits. Claims of hidden bones are dismissed as conspiracy theory without credible documentation. Linguists argue that ancient terms translated as giants may simply mean mighty ones or warriors. Hyperbole was common